I remember when I was 6 years old, my parents took me to see the Brooklyn Bridge, and we were standing on the bridge. I remember seeing the huge bridge, all of the steel structures, and I asked my parents, like, how did the bridge get built? I was so little, the bridge was so big, and I couldn't imagine how people could build the bridge. So we walked over to the plaques and we were reading the information, and I just remember thinking, like, how did humans build this bridge and make it possible for people on one side of the bridge to get to the other side? And I was always truly fascinated with that. I was fascinated at how we could build such a structure and how such a structure could create such an ease of access from one side of a town or a city to another. I think that's where the fascination began with bridges. Fast forward about 30 years, I wake up one day and I realize that I have this goal, and I kind of called it a life goal because I don't like the term bucket list. I just wanted it to be my life goal to walk over 10 of the most amazing bridges in the world with 10 people that I love. And I don't even know where it came from. I just have always loved bridges, and so I started writing down like what I wanted that to be and what that looked like. And it was really just simple. I had a couple of rules. First of all, whoever I walked the bridge with, the person that I loved, it had to be just me and that person. It wasn't like me, my sister, and then my nephew and niece and my brother-in-law, but just me and my sister. The second rule was it had to be a bridge that had something very majestic or phenomenal about it. I wanted to kind of replicate that same experience that I felt that day on the Brooklyn Bridge. The third rule was it had to be a bridge that neither me nor the other person had ever walked across. So of course it had to be walkable as well. And then lastly, I wanted each of those 10 bridges to be a bridge that neither one of us had walked over, but also in a country that we hadn't been and walked over a bridge. So with those conditions, I set out on this hunt to just write down all these bridges and try to come up with a kind of this like hit list of bridges. And I got into contact with the 10 people, most of the people were in my family, and started kind of pairing people up with bridges. I also gave myself 10 years to complete this goal. And the very first bridge that I walked, I decided to walk with my dad. Now, my dad served in the Vietnam War in Korea on the DMZ, and he ended up getting a sort of an Agent Orange. It's kind of a dioxide poisoning that affects his skin, and paired up with his diabetes, it's caused him a lot of health problems and made it hard for him to walk. So when I was thinking about the first bridge that I would walk, I knew that that bridge was going to be with my dad, and it was going to be in the United States. So I chose the Golden Gate Bridge. And my dad lives in LA, so I flew into LA and I picked my dad up, and we took the big trek all the way from LA to San Francisco. And when we got there, 6.5 hours later, I had that same feeling. I'm standing on the bridge, I'm there with my dad, and I was like, wow, this bridge is so amazing and majestic. And a funny thing kind of happened along the way. My dad in the last 20 years has not really been that responsive to our family. It's been a little bit of a rough relationship with me, my sister, and my brother. And I found that spending that time with my dad on the drive up gave us this opportunity to have conversations that we really never had. So we're driving up and we get there, and we're both pretty amazed. Now, my dad also, when I pulled up to his house, he had a walker, which I didn't know about. And so my dad gets out, he has his walker, and I'm so excited. I'm not even thinking about logistics, like maybe taking some water to walk over the bridge, or snacks, or maybe how the weather conditions are. I'm just like, let's cross the bridge. So we set out to walk over it. And we're going along, and my dad's just scooting on his walker. He's just going really quick. And we're about halfway across, and I'm like, how long is this bridge? I turn around, I look, and we're, it's about the same distance back as it is forward. And I realize that the bridge is over 3 miles round trip. My dad's starting to wear down a little bit. By the time we got to the other side of the bridge, my dad was completely dehydrated and we had no water. So I asked him if he just wanted to turn around and go back, and he absolutely was like, no way. We came to walk a bridge, we're walking a bridge. So we get to the other side of the bridge. My dad is absolutely dehydrated, and he says he's going to run to the restroom. So while we're in the parking lot, I'm looking around and I'm asking people, hey, can I get some water? Can I get some water? I literally felt like a homeless person, like begging for water. And I finally come across this lady, and I see that she has 2 kids in the car, and I figured if anybody had water, it'd probably be her. So I walk up to this lady and ask her for some water, and I say, hey, can I get some water? And she goes, like, she looks at me like, why are you asking me for water? And I was thinking, oh, she thinks it's for me, like I'm just begging her for water. And it couldn't have been better timing. I was like, no, it's not for me, it's for my... And then as soon as I pointed over to where my dad was, he was coming out of the restroom, and he just looked horrible. His face was sunken in, very dehydrated, red, and she was like, oh my gosh, take the water, here, take it. I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, yes, please, I can drive and get more water. So I give my dad the water, and we're hanging out, and you know, this thing that would have taken any other 2 people maybe, you know, an hour at most to walk all the way across and walk back, took my dad and I a couple of hours. But what I realized along this way and along this journey is we started having conversations that I just never thought we would engage in. Things about my childhood, things that happened in our family. And by the time we made it back across the bridge and we got in the car, my dad said to me, you know, I think it would be really cool if our family could have a family call. So I couldn't do it that weekend, but I told him from the following weekend I could. And we hopped on a call. We all hopped on Skype. And my dad actually got on the call, and the first thing that he said to me, my sister, and my brother when we got on, he said, I just really want to apologize to you guys for how I've been acting towards you. I'm basically your whole life. And he kind of went on to say that when my dad and my mom got divorced, that he became really bitter and angry, and he just feels like he took it out on us in you know, in the coming years. It was really weird when I walked over the bridge, and when I first had this idea to walk 10 bridges with 10 people that I love, I never actually thought what would come out of it. It just was this idea that didn't really mean anything. I mean, I come up with ideas all the time. That's what I do. I'm a marketing person, and I execute. Sometimes I execute on ideas and I don't even know why I'm doing it. I just like, oh, I have this idea, I'm going to do it. I realized after I walked the bridge with my dad that something amazing happened. And there was something so metaphorical from walking over this humongous bridge. It's like we started off on one side, and we were able to cross over all of these things that had happened in our lives, and the conversation just kept going on as we were walking across. And I felt like, even, you know, metaphorically, we left some things on the other side of the bridge, and you know, we didn't really bring them back. We just wanted to come back with a better, you know, better outlook, better attitude. And you know, this was my first bridge, and the second bridge that I decided to walk was with somebody that I was in a really close relationship with, and we set out to walk over this bridge in Korea. When we were walking over it, I remember the feeling that I had. This is somebody that I was in a long-term relationship with that I thought I was going to marry. And I remember when we were walking over the bridge, I had that same feeling. I felt like we were on one side, and as we were crossing, we were having these conversations. But this time, as the conversations went on, I realized that we had had deeper conversations, deep conversations that we had never had before. And as I was walking over, I felt this like empty, sad feeling, and I knew deep down in my heart that this person really wasn't right for me to marry. So we walked over the bridge, came back, and about a month later, I ended up calling off the relationship. And in hindsight, we became, really good friends after, and we just both kind of realized it wasn't the right thing. So I started seeing this pattern with walking bridges with people, that every time I walked a bridge with somebody, something came out of it. And it's really hard to tell sometimes whether something's good or something's bad, because you never know the consequences of either. Around that time, one of my friends came up to me and said, "Hey, I see on Facebook and social media that you've been walking bridges with people, and I think it's really cool, but how come I can't be in your 10? Or you know what, actually I don't even have to be in your 10. Why can't I be in your like tier 2? And I thought that was funny, and I said, you know what, that's actually a good idea, but I'm not going to put anybody in a tier 2. So I then had this other idea that I would walk bridges with other people that I cared about, and I just wouldn't make it follow the same rules as the original 10 of being in different countries and whatnot. So shortly after I decided I was going to do that, I found myself in Toronto, Canada. I was there working for one of my clients, and I had a day off, and decided that I was going to trek and walk over to Niagara Falls and cross over and check it out from both the US and the Canada side. And I ended up going to the bus, and I'm waiting in line for the bus to Niagara Falls, and this guy comes up and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, is this the bus to go to Niagara Falls?" And I turn around and I said, "Well, I hope so, because that's what I'm trying to do." This guy's name was Pietro. He was from Milano, Italy, and I'm half Italian, so immediately we kind of like struck this conversation. Oh, and also we were the only two people waiting in line that were like there by ourselves. Everybody else was there with family. So we kind of struck this conversation, and we found out we had so many things in common. He worked for an ad agency. I owned a marketing company. He lived in Italy. My family's from Italy. I'm half Italian. But we also realized that, as part of our conversation, we realized that we had kind of a similar upbringing, even though we were in two different countries. So we ended up walking over Niagara Falls and hanging out over there, and it hit me while I was with him that day. I said, you know what? I should ask him if he wants to walk a bridge with me. And even though he's a total stranger, I think it would be a really cool experience. So I asked him, I said, "Hey, you want to walk a bridge with me?" And he said, "Yeah, you know what, that's actually kind of a cool idea." So we got up the next day, we took an Uber to this bridge, and as we were walking across it, another idea hit me. I thought, wow, with the other two experiences that I've had on bridges, why don't I try to kind of intentionally replicate what I had done before? So when we were about halfway across, I said to Pietro, "You know what, Pietro, there's something that happened to me when I was a young girl that I've literally maybe two people in the whole world know about. I've really never told anybody, and it was kind of a terrible thing, and you know what, I'm going to tell you about it. And what I really want to do is I kind of want to leave that memory and all the pain and everything that went with that over on the other side. Now, you don't have to tell me anything. I just feel like I want to do this." And so he was like, "Cool." We got to the other side. I ended up telling him this secret that I had, and he was really awesome about it, and we chatted a little bit, and then he said, "You know what, I want to tell you something. When I was 13 years old, my brother died. He died in a horrific car accident, and at the time my parents really wanted me to go and view the body, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to say my goodbyes, and I spent the next 8 years of my life regretting that decision. So on my 21st birthday, I ended up going to his grave, and I promised my brother one thing. See, my brother always wanted to travel the world, and he never got that opportunity. And so I promised him from that day on that every day of my life, I was going to live and do the things that he never got to do. And it was really funny because I actually met him doing that thing. He was traveling the world by himself for his brother. Oh my gosh, it touched me in such a way. I couldn't explain it. And I felt like I had known Pietro my entire life. So we left that day, and I asked him, I said, hey, if you ever travel your way, all the way to Portland, Oregon in the United States, please come see me. And he promised, you know, that if he did, he would. About 6 months later, I get a message from Pietro on Facebook saying, hey, I'm coming to Portland. He ended up coming to Portland, and we walked a bridge in Portland. And the last thing that we did before he left Portland was we promised each other that through this experience that we had in Toronto, and in the 6 months that we got to know each other over social media, I mean, honestly, we had only spent maybe a couple hours together personally. We promised each other that what we were going to do is we were going to walk 10 more bridges with strangers, intentionally walk them with strangers, and then a year later we were going to walk a third bridge together. So that's kind of what I'm in the middle of right now. I've walked now with 2 other strangers, and every time I walk the bridge, I try to intentionally have a conversation with them. Maybe it's something I'm feeling at the moment, like I need to get over, or it's something I need to get off my chest, or sometimes I feel like I'm just being an ear for something that they're going through. And with each situation, it's been this incredible connection that I never would have gotten if I wouldn't have intentionally set out to walk a bridge and have this bridge conversation with people. So what I really want to do is inspire people to do a movement of walking bridges. Find a bridge anywhere. It doesn't matter. It can be a little, you know, pedestrian footbridge. It's really just the metaphorical representation of intentionally taking a relationship that you have, whether it be a complete stranger or somebody that you know and you love, and maybe it's to repair their relationship, maybe it's to talk about something that needs to be talked about. But I would encourage you to find your own bridge and walk with somebody. If you do, I think what you'll find is that you'll bridge more than just the gap in the distance that you physically walk. You'll bridge that same gap in distance in your life and in your relationships. So go find your bridge and go walk it.